When you're sitting down to create your launch content, incorporating video is one of the best ways to increase your sales, and it's actually a lot easier than you think. So in this episode of the Video Sales School series, I am going to be sharing tips for creating low-lift content for your launch so you can incorporate more video and increase your sales. If you haven't already listened to the other parts of the series, I've covered common mistakes that I see with sales content and how to fix them, plus tips for your calls to action, what to say, where to put them, and how many you should include in your content. So go back into the archives to binge, whether you're listening over on the Shine Online podcast or you're watching the visual episodes on YouTube. So let's dive right on in with tip number 1. When it comes to marketing materials in your launch, the first thing you should focus on is actually your copy and your messaging. So this could be sales page. This could also include emails. I like to start with these core pieces of content that you know you need to create launch materials. And then I like to use that to then repurpose and reformat into video scripts, video ideas, and even captions or text in my video content. So here's a few ways that I do this with my own launch content. The first is taking that copy and turning it into a script with talking points of what you would want to say in talking videos. This can include things like reels. This also could be lives or even stories. I love pre-scheduling and preparing core stories content. I definitely like to keep stories as a place that I will add in content in the moment. But when I know I want to tour people through my program or answer frequently asked questions, I can take that from my sales page and use that for that talking video content without having to script or outline or start from scratch. Then we have the actual text that you're adding to a quote video, for example. And a quote video is basically just B-roll footage and you're adding text right on top. And this is one of the easiest types of content to create, period. But during a launch, you can really crank a lot of these out. So I will take a high converting email or copy from my sales page, and I will take a line or two or a main point or even some bullet points, and I will turn that into the text that I'm adding on top of video footage. And then I'll just add audio to go along with it. And when it comes to the captions that you're writing, whether it's on something like a reel or even if it's carousels that you're creating, I love to take that copy and use that to build the bits and pieces of my caption. So as you can see, in some instances, I'm taking word for word the messaging or the copy or the idea that I have in an email or on my sales page. But for the most part, I'm really taking it and tweaking it and giving it new life in this format, which is video. So as you're prepping for your launch, don't dive right on into video. Focus on your core messaging and copy first, because that will guide your video strategy. And also, when we think about how people buy, which we've talked about throughout this series, if people need multiple touch points, this is actually really strategic, right? Because they're going to read it in one of your emails, and then they're also going to see it on a sales page, and then they're also going to hear it or see it in a video. So you're essentially using all those different elements together to increase your conversions and sales. Now on to tip number 2, which goes hand in hand with tip number 1, and it is to have a content day during the prep phase of your launch. So a launch is broken down into 3 phases. We have the pre-launch ramp-up phase, we have the actual launch, which is where you're promoting your offer, and then we have post-launch, which is kind of where you're nurturing and getting back into your regular content flow. But before all of those phases, we want to make sure we're allocating time for a prep phase, at least 30 days, so you can take time to prep all the assets, the content, the timeline, and anything you need for the following phases of your launch. So you're not scrambling and stressed and overwhelmed while you're actually launching. So during your prep phase, I want you to go into your calendar, go into your project management tool, and schedule in a content day, which I've done an episode for on the Shine Online podcast where I share kind of what a content day is, what to include. It's something we talk way in depth on inside the video content camp. But in summary, a content day is a dedicated period of time, doesn't have to be an entire day, where you you are only focusing on your content tasks, specifically launch content. So as I mentioned, quote videos where you need video B-roll footage, sit down and batch a bunch of that or source a bunch of it from your camera roll. If you know you want to prep some talking videos from all of the ideas you already sourced from your copy, sit down and batch all of those in one sitting, whether it's reels or stories. This allows you to prep things for low lift content like quote videos, prep all of that B-roll footage you can use in stories and in even short form video content, but also it allows you to get the high energy video content out of the way, like talking videos. And just a few other things that I might do during that prep phase of a launch is get crystal clear on what my launch event would be, whether it's a webinar, a challenge, a content series, and start to actually prep the content for that and also promoting that. Getting all that core copy and messaging done for tip 1 so we can use that for our video content. And also starting to schedule some of those pre-scheduled pieces of content so they're ready to go so you can start launching. During this prep phase, I like to take all of the core events that I know are going to happen during a launch, like open cart or bonuses or the launch event that I'm doing. And then I like to build the timeline of when I want to be done prepping, when I want pre-launch to start, and how much content I actually need for that entire timeline. And tip 3 for creating low lift video content for your next launch is to start creating a launch content bank. So if you've already created promotional assets, sales content, or even just regular nurture content that's related to your offer that you want to launch, start organizing that. This can be in a doc, it can be in a content calendar, and start organizing it by your offers and by the topics that you're talking about. So just like I shared in tip number 1, how you are going to take existing copy and messaging and use that for videos, for this tip, you're going to be doing something similar where you're essentially going to be taking past content that you know converts, that you know really resonates with the ideal person that you want to be sharing your offers with, and start creating launch content with it so you're not starting from scratch. Repetition is so important in the sales process. So you repeating the same things over and over and giving it new life and repurposing it is actually really, really helpful for your strategy overall. People will know what you're an expert at. They'll start to tie it with your offer, and it will start to hit home where they'll be ready to buy when you launch. So in that sales content bank, you can start to take past video ideas, past captions or copy, and also just looking at the data and seeing what converted. See where people are commenting. Inside my program, the camp, when people join, they actually have an onboarding form where I ask them what piece of content influenced your decision to join. So it also can be built in your onboarding process. Or also just seeing correlations of, okay, I posted this video or I went live and then I saw sales shortly after that. Now, I want to walk you through a few examples of how I did that recently for promoting a launch event for my video content camp offer. So let's start with this email that I wrote that really resonated with people, all about being in my flop era and really just talking about how certain metrics don't actually matter for getting you closer to your goals. So it's okay when content flops. And I kind of shared 3 main takeaways and then shared my call to action. And so from this email, I actually used it to create a quote video. So I just took some existing B-roll footage I already had on my phone and I added a hook, and then I added kind of some context of what I was talking about. And then I went and wrote a caption where I essentially kind of took the main takeaways and bits and pieces, but I made it relevant to this video. And I actually grabbed from another reel caption I had written years ago that was kind of relevant to viral growth and views doesn't actually get growth in your business. And then of course I applied a call to action for my program. Okay, now let's go into another example. So I did this kind of behind the scenes tour video for my last launch where I shared kind of some like aesthetics snappy video clips, touring people around the program and using that to break down the offer. And so I essentially did something very similar, but instead I kind of used that 0.5 camera angle with my back camera, and I made it a little bit longer. I kind of used text to show what people were seeing, so like they really could get what the different elements were in the program. And I honestly used like pretty much the exact same caption. I copy and paste that caption. So that's essentially what we got going on in this video. So kind of an example of me taking the idea, but also the caption, but giving new video content to go with it to kind of freshen things up. In this video, I got an example of I got a question on when to batch content versus organic content. And as you can see, this is kind of like a higher energy video where I did a lot of editing. I did different angles, which like honestly performed really well. But I was like, how can I take this idea and this question and just give it new life? And so essentially I took this video clip I already had on my phone, and I used the question that I was answering talking to camera as the hook of the video. I kind of gave my response, and then I used a read the caption call to action in the video, where essentially I took the same caption, I updated it, I tweaked it, and then I actually added a conversion call to action, because in the previous video it was really just for engagement. So this one was really for that launch event that I was doing. And with this audio, it was like that audio of like, oh my gosh, I love this question. And so I wasn't necessarily creating a video based on a trend, but I was taking an existing idea and then just used a trend that went with it versus like the other way around. Okay. And the last way is I took this piece of video content where essentially I shared like tips for batching, and I mapped out like 4 different ideas. This is kind of like content that I used for kind of like pre-sale awareness. And instead of having one long clip, I actually put together a bunch of changing clips. And instead of the text of the video changing, like for this video, it had the hook and then the tips showed up afterwards. But in this video, I just had the tips on the entire time. I kind of removed some jargon. I kind of tweaked it, updated it, and then I used some of the pieces from the old caption, but I kind of just made it more relevant. I updated it. And then of course I updated it with that call to action. So I hope you can kind of see how I think of repurposing when I'm actually just creating launch content. If you have loved the Video Sales School series and you want more low-lift video strategies that will help you increase your conversions, I highly recommend joining us inside the Video Content Camp. You get coaching, curriculum, an interactive workbook, and feedback from me where you will know exactly how to tweak your launch content and increase your sales with video. So can't wait to see you inside the camp, and I will see you in the next episode of this series where I will wrap things up by taking you behind the scenes on what I include in my own launches. So see you in the next episode. And if you want to catch up with the rest of this series, I highly recommend starting with this video.